I work for Uni Global Union as head of department for property services, which is cleaning and private security. And when I came 6 years ago, I was looking for the toolbox. What toolbox do we have? So we have OECD guidelines, and actually with OECD guidelines we can go into procedures. In certain countries we can, where there's a national contact point. Very complicated procedures. It's like a mediation, and you have to be silent for the whole course of the mediation. And one big fight we did costed like 4 years. For a unionist to be silent for 4 years, that's a big ask, you know. And we didn't really win it. So, the OECD guidelines, you have a UN Global Compact. A lot of companies put it on their website. They adhere you on, but there's no enforcement whatsoever of that. So you can write it on your website, but it doesn't obligate you to anything. You have the International Security League with their own code. That's also one that is not to be enforced. And then I saw the ICoCA. Hey, hey, and I thought it was interesting. And I went to my boss. I said, "We have to work on this." And she said, "They're useless. They're totally useless. They only do conflict zones. It's about private military. Private military never becomes union members. That's not our scope, and they don't have a good workers paragraph, so they're useless." I said, "Well, then we have to work on that." So, from the first moment that I met someone from ICoCA, I tried to work my way in, and we went to several meetings. Whenever we got invited, we went there, and even it was off topic, we would say that we need a better workers paragraph. We said that in Trinidad. We were twice in Trinidad with ICoCA and the Red Cross, and I was once somewhere here in Geneva, I think. So every time we developed a relationship, and then Vincent came, and then things started to really roll. And I mean, our philosophy is that if you want to talk about human rights, then first of all, you have to talk about the human rights of workers. Because if the workers' human rights are not respected, how can you expect a worker to follow up on human rights in his daily job if his own rights are not respected? And we have a lot of examples where it's maybe on the edge of if it's a human rights violation, or just not, or just a little bit. You know, the freedom of association is considered to be a human right. The freedom to negotiate a contract is considered to be a human right. To have a salary that pays your bills is considered to be a human right, a living wage, you know, and that's not a minimum wage, a living wage. Many minimum wages that are set in the world are not a living wage. If you go to Uganda or to Kenya, there is a minimum wage, I think, but it's very low, very, very low. My wife is from Mozambique. I know in Mozambique it's about $60 a month and even though it's very cheap living there, for $60 a month, you cannot get around. You cannot get around. So retaliation against workers happens a lot in Latin America. We know that in Colombia, for instance, really bad. People get killed. That's the level of retaliation. Still happens every now and then, not as bad as it was a couple of years ago. Since they have the peace, it's better. I've been there recently, but it's still, if you start in a private security company, you start a union, you better look over your shoulder all the time, because you might be threatened. You get these nice little messages from Aguilas Negras, the Black Hawks or whatever it's, and nobody knows who they are, but it's very intimidating, I can tell you. It's very intimidating. So we run into that, and we need a good toolbox. We can make collective agreements. We can help to build unions, which is often a story of many years. We were just discussing that we helped the Kenyan National Private Security Workers Union in 2013. Then they had 800 members, now they have 100,000 members, and maybe more, we don't even know the exact number. And they became relevant, and they lobbied together with some prominent employers. They lobbied for national legislation on private security, so some standards, and private security authority, and that improved the situation dramatically. There's still a lot of things going wrong, but in general, the companies that are real bad, they don't have so much chances anymore. And we all know, if you work in private security, there's a lot of fly-by-night companies that compete the market totally kaput. They destroy it. And that makes it very hard for companies that we have an agreement with, like G4S or Securitas. If we have an agreement with them on human rights, on trade union rights, but it makes it very hard for them to stay in competition if we cannot take the other ones out. And the basic idea would be that we create an agreement with a company and we make sure that we can organize people into a union and we get like an industrial balance. And within that company, we also generate revenues from the union fees. The union fees should be, in our philosophy, should be used to fight these other companies, to fight the cowboys. But if you're still in that same company, you have to fix all the problems there all the time, you lose that opportunity. And we're still struggling with that. Like, I was in India, I can say the name, it's not a evaluation but I was in India and we had a very bad situation there with G4S, and we talked with G4S how to fix it, and they were willing to fix it, but they said, what are you going to do about the competition? I mean, we can fix it, but it will cost us more while we get competed out of the market by the competition, so go after the competition. And that's a very honest discussion, actually. I mean, I agree. But then we have to build unions that are strong enough to fight this competition. And that takes a long time. That's not overnight. And we had our own conference last week in Rome, and we've been talking about how many people are actually organized in a union. That's way too little. And people look at us, our affiliates look at us as a big organization in Switzerland. I asked my team to stand up. That's 5 people. I said, this is the team we have for the whole world. And not all of them are full-time. Some of them are half-time and work for another sector the other half of the time. So in reality, it's less than 4. So how fast do you think that we can change the world? If you sit on your ass and expect us to change it, it's not going to happen. We can do one project in Kenya, we can do one in Zambia, we can do one in New Zealand at the moment, we can do one in Nepal, we can do one in Colombia, but that won't change the world. It will take 100 years if you wait for that. So we look for instruments for the toolbox. The code is one of them. The other one is build strong unions. We need more bilateral contacts between unions. Successful union in Kenya should help the union in Zambia instead of us flying in. That is sort of cooperation. We need the unions in Europe to stand up, because the unions in Europe are not on the winning hand. Maybe they have still very good institutional power, but if you look at the numbers, most of them are dropping down. We need them to get out of their institutional mode and build real power and use that power and that leverage to change things in other parts of the world. And it all comes back, at the end of the day, what do we have? We have ILO. We work with ILO. ILO is a very complicated organization, as you might know. It's tripartite. It's the only UN organization that is tripartite. It's employers, employees, and governments. So everything that comes out of ILO is a compromise, per definition, a diplomatic compromise. So that's not a fast way forward. The code could help us a lot. It could help us a lot. Actually, when we have due diligence law in Europe, which is somewhere in the pipeline, there's due diligence law in Germany in the pipeline. In France, it's already in place. In the Netherlands, where I come from, they're discussing it. Then the code could be part of that due diligence search, you know, if we could, and we could promote it, because you have the same problem as I have, that if you look at the affiliation of ICoCA, that's not exactly the whole world of private security. That's small parts here, small parts there. There's some global companies who are only affiliated for one country. So we have to do something about that too. The code has to be wider, has to be carried by more governments, by more companies, by more clients, by more NGOs. I mean, there's NGOs on your board, but the unions are not. That's another thing. So looking back, I think we can make a better tool out of it, a tool that is benefiting, that will be beneficiary for the whole industry. Well, good for both sides. It's not like I don't have to do a union promotion here. It's good for both sides. If we raise the standards together, everybody will profit from it. Everybody will profit from it. And we have to get away from, I can get back to India, not G4S, but local companies. Gujarat Private Security Workers Union. They've been fighting for 4 years to get the minimum wage paid, the legal minimum wage. No help from the government. You have to fight. The client was actually the city of Ahmedabad. And we had to fight for 4 years to make sure that the city was paying the security companies enough so that the security companies could pay a minimum wage. We cannot do that fight everywhere in the world. We need instruments like the code to help us. So, is that long enough, Vincent? You know, last week I had a big discussion about taking in account cultural sensitivities, and I said, well, I have a culture too. I'm Dutch. We're very blunt and open. So.